The New York Times reports this morning that in 2016, then candidate Donald Trump, along with his lawyer at the time, Michael Cohen, devised a plan to buy up all the dirt the National Enquirer and its parent company had collected on the future president, dating back to the 1980s. The plan, which was never finalized, indicated just how concerned they were about all the information amassed by the company, American Media, and its chairman, David Pecker, a loyal Trump ally of 2 decades who has cooperated with investigators. It remains unclear whether the proposed plan has attracted the interest of federal prosecutors in New York, who last week obtained a guilty plea from Cohen over a $130,000 payment to Stormy Daniels and also payments to Karen McDougal. It is not known how much of the material on Trump is still in American Media's possession. Lawyers for both Trump and Cohen declined to comment on the Times article, as did American Media. We will just let that sit there. Just think about that. Joining us now, though, Democratic Mayor of New York City, Bill de Blasio, along with Parkland, Florida shooting survivor and co-founder of the March for Our Lives, David Hogg. They're here to announce a new partnership between student activists and mayors across the country to get younger voters more engaged. Mike Barnicle, Eddie Glaude Jr., Yamiche Alcindor, and Rick Tyler, all still with us as well. Mr. Mayor, thanks for being with us. Want to ask you a few big picture, broader questions, and then we want to focus on your plans and your new partnership here. Yep. The tone of politics as we lead up to the midterms and look toward the midterms, I want to ask from a Democratic perspective, with the president warning of violence if the Democrats win, and the race for governor in Florida already being tinged with racism and getting ugly. What are some of the challenges? What are some of your concerns about how Democrats move forward and try and win?
Well, I think what Democrats are doing this year more and more is acting like real Democrats and being bolder, being more clearly progressive, speaking to working people and everyday people's lives. I think that's why Gillum won in Florida. I think that's why Ocasio-Cortez won in Queens and the Bronx. I think you see something happening all over the country. And the reason I say that is I think that's the pertinent reality, is what's going to move people in their hearts emotionally to come out and vote. That energy is on the Democratic and the progressive side right now. And that's what I think can't be tracked. You know, polling's not picking it up. The reality of turnout is something that is beyond the reach of traditional polling to analyze. And we keep getting surprised. We keep seeing things happen that were not predicted. And I think you're going to see a lot more of that in November. You certainly saw it last November. Virginia is a great example, the House of Delegates. This is going to be an extraordinary change election, in my view, and things are happening at the grassroots that none of the experts, none of the pundits can possibly see.
That's not unusual if that happens. But
yeah.
David, Mayors for Our Lives. How many mayors? What's your objective? What are you going to do? And site-specific, what impact would Mayors for Our Lives have in the Florida gubernatorial race?
Well, so what we're doing with Mayors for Our Lives is we're announcing a campaign that's bipartisan with Republicans and Democrats to register a new generation of voters. Right now we have over 50 voters in 25 states, including D.C., in terms of mayors. And I think the impact on the Florida election will be the fact that polls do not register people that are newly registered a lot of the time. They don't expect young people to go out. They don't take into account young people, and especially a lot of time people of color in different communities that, historically speaking, like even my AP Gov textbook, it talks about like the Latino population being the sleeping giant in terms of demographics, and that they like don't turn out. But I think we're starting to see with like Beto and different people, these people are turning out, and polls are not registering them. Yeah. And if young people turn out, even if Beto's within 1 point of Cruz, for example, it's not registered.
Explain who he is, Beto O'Rourke running for instead Cruz,
So let me ask two different questions. So I want to hear more about the role of young voters in Gillum's nomination for the Democratic, to become the Democratic nominee for the governor of Florida. What role did they play, particularly in Orlando, perhaps in Broward and other places where he surprised folk, right? And then the second question to you, Mr. Mayor, is you remember that story in Politico a while back saying that, you know, the progressive wing, Bernie's army, was in disarray, that this talk of the progressive move or thrust within the party was a bit much, that Ocasio-Cortez didn't really signal something, but something has happened.
Something's going on.
And so how do you think about I heard you mention this in your answer to Mika, but how would you characterize that alongside of the DNC reform with regards to superdelegates? What's happening in the Democratic Party right now?
Look, the change is happening. It's profound. It's happening in states across the country. You can see progressive candidates who have won primaries they weren't supposed to win all over the country. You can see that when the progressive candidate does get the Democratic nomination, the kind of energy they can create among a whole swath of the electorate, including younger voters, who we must get involved. And that's a bipartisan statement, but I'll speak as a progressive and a Democrat. Younger voters are going to be the difference makers. We've seen it already. We saw it in November 17, how a lot of younger voters engaged in states, including Virginia, as I mentioned, and changed the whole dynamic, and are choosing to run, too. This is another big X factor, more and more younger candidates. So I think it fits perfectly with this amazing initiative, and I have to say, Mayors for Our Lives, 50-plus mayors united in the concept that we're going to reach younger folks, students, even at high school level, getting ready to vote and beyond. And they're going to be game changers in our society. And I'll tell you something, when it comes to gun safety, what I hear from younger voters is uncompromising. They believe it's a matter of life and death. They're right. And what David and his colleagues have done has changed American politics and awoken a different sleeping giant, which is younger voters.
Yeah, exactly. The issue of gun safety is not Democrat or Republican. It's an American issue that we face as a country. In terms of more developed countries, we face one of the highest rates of gun deaths per capita of any country. And the only way we're ever going to be able to solve that is by working together as Democrats and Republicans and as Americans to solve this issue and registering everybody to vote. On the topic of what happened in the gubernatorial race, I think young people have made an impact on Gillum. And the reason why they didn't expect him to win is the fact that we had a Florida team going across Florida to every congressional district, all 27 in Florida, throughout the summer, registering thousands of new voters. In Orlando, our team for March for Our Lives Orlando helped promote voter registration so much that it went up 90% in Florida. Youth voter registration is up 41%. Those people are not taken into account on polls, and that's why these things are happening. Wow. Young people are angry, but more importantly, they want to see people that bring people together and don't divide us more. They want to see Democrats and Republicans that actually make this country unified and not even more divided than it is.
So let me ask about another gubernatorial race, and that would be in the state of New York, Mr. Mayor. The Democratic primary for governor has gotten kind of spicy. Andrew Cuomo accused Cynthia Nixon of being a phony who concealed her tax returns. I don't think that's true, and that she would run the state into a debt-driven chaos. Yeah. So I guess two questions. Would Cynthia Nixon be a good governor for the state of New York? And are you concerned that the race has gotten too negative?
Well, first of all, I have not made a public endorsement in this race, and it's something I'm still looking at. But I want to say there's no question in my mind Cynthia Nixon is an extraordinary human being, activist who's made a huge impact, particularly in terms of education and fairness for our children. I thought she more than held her own last night in the debate. I thought she got a lot of very powerful ideas out and a lot of very powerful critiques out. And I found some of the governor's counterpoints a little desperate, honestly. The notion of calling her a corporation, that sounded like the Citizens United decision by the Supreme Court that the corporation is a person. So look, I think the bottom line here is, just like we've been talking about, this race is unpredictable here in New York. There's a lot going on the ground, and there's a lot of people who are thinking very independently, and anyone who thinks they know where this is going is not watching what's happening in current politics.
And I think one important thing to remember is the fact that when it comes to voting for people, young people, we are starting to see this shift in America, that not only around voting for young people, but around the fact that when wealthier people are running, younger people are starting to think, why would these people be wanting to fix the world that, quite frankly, a lot of us think that they messed up? Like the president being a billionaire. Why would somebody, these people that are creating a lot of the problems that we face as a nation right now are coming back into politics and saying that they want to solve them, when in reality they're only in it for themselves, and that's the truth. But that's why it's so important that we vote, because no matter what your opinion is, you get out there and you vote on November 6th. You get out there and you register on September 25th in a bipartisan effort, because you can say what you want about politics, but if you don't vote, you have no right to.
Amen. And David's
All right,
right.
fair enough.
That's the X
Mayor
factor
Bill
in
de
elections this
Blasio?
year.
Yes, it is. And David Hogg, thank you both for being on this morning. Appreciate it. And up next, Cynthia Nixon joins us after her heated debate with New York Governor Andrew Cuomo. And before we go to break, the president is posting about his outgoing White House counsel this morning. He tweeted, quote, "I'm very excited about the person who will be taking the place of Don McGahn as White House counsel. I liked Don, but he was not responsible for me not firing Bob Mueller or Jeff Sessions. So much fake reporting and fake news." Wow, so much to get to. We'll be right back.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.